everybody. Welcome to the Real Estate Collective, brought to you by WFG National Title. I am your host, Lisa Suazo, and I am here with my colleague, Sima Patel. And we are thrilled because today on our show, we have as a guest, Deviree Vallejo with Live Sotheby's International Realty. She is a veteran in the real estate industry and just an amazing woman, top producer. So Deviree, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, we're so thrilled to have you. So if there is anyone who does not know you, tell us a little bit about you. How long have you been in real estate? What do you specialize in? What's your really area of focus? What are you passionate about?
Sure. I have been in real estate since 2003, which is crazy. I can't even believe it's been that long. In some ways you look back on it and you're like, yeah, actually it has been that long. And then other times you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going on 18 years. So I started in 2003 with Keller Williams over at Second and University. And for the first year or two of my career, I used to spend all my time at Whole Foods across the street because it had just opened up and I had no business. So I had nothing else to do. So I would meet my friends at Whole Foods for lunch every day, which was fantastic. And since then, I would say, I've primarily been in central Denver. So initially when I started, I would definitely work the suburbs quite a bit just because I had buyers and I would go wherever the buyers wanted to go. Obviously, being a veteran and having a lot of experience under my belt, I've really centralized. So I don't tend to go to the suburbs too often. But I say that, and I had a closing on Friday in Castle Pine. So it just depends on the situation and the buyer. But I tend to stay more central Denver and all the various neighborhoods in central Denver. I don't go too far north, don't go too far south, east or west for that matter either. So it's, I like to kind of stay within a 5-mile radius.
Nice. Well, thank you. And, Deviree, I've known you over the years, and you've had great relationships with builders and worked on many development projects over the years. What would you say some of the shifts are since going through the pandemic and recent inventory shortages?
Specifically to builders, as far as shifts, that is a great question. And I would say, builders, like everyone else, are experiencing, we have a severe inventory issue. So it's been interesting to see how buyer patterns and seller patterns have changed because of it. And what I've noticed just specific to new builds is the timing for one. So, 4 or 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, oftentimes we would get a listing for a project and we would pre-sell the entire project. And typically, I remember when I first started selling new builds, I would sell off floor plans. So people would come into the office, we'd lay out a full set of floor plans, we'd walk them through what the unit was going to look like, show them finished boards. And that was kind of the process. And then it slowly started shifting to, okay, we're going to start selling them at framing. So then once the building was actually framed and there was something to walk through, then we would usually start taking contracts. And then it started shifting to drywall. And so then we were like, okay, well, you can't sell, it's difficult to sell during framing because your sense of space is off because there's nothing to compare it to. You don't have walls. So we wait till drywall. And then we start selling. And then it started shifting to, okay, we'll wait till cabinets are in, because once cabinets are in, they define the space and then people really know where everything goes. And now, they sell typically when done. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I would say that the biggest reasons are, number one, the risk to the seller is much lower than it used to be because inventory is so limited and sales are so sky high, and particularly in that price point, so many of the new builds are between the magic price point of 500 to 800,000, and there's a ton of buyers in that price range. So they know that units are going to sell and they're probably going to sell pretty quickly. And so the sellers or developers would rather wait until the units are almost completed before they sell it, because number one, it alleviates having to deal with, 10 to 20 different buyers. Number two, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean that in just in like the risk of having a buyer walk onto the job site and, not wearing a hard hat, and they get a $5,000 fine from OSHA for not having a hard hat. There's nuances to that scenario that they're trying to avoid. And then it used to be that the banks providing the construction financing would require pre-sales. So now that the sales are pretty sure bet, they don't necessarily require those pre-sales up front. And so if a seller says, well, I've got 10 to 15 units to sell and I can sell them now, or I can wait till they're done and realistically get more money by the time they're done, I'm just going to wait till they're done. Because that's the other thing. The market's been appreciating so quickly, as we all know, that if you sell something at framing, by the time it's actually complete, which would be 6 to 9 months later, per unit, you're probably talking a $30,000 difference. So, it really is. I mean, that's going to change, of course, at some point, but, I've been saying that too for 3 years. And of course, now we're crazier than ever. So,
Well, and to that point, I know one of the things that we've been hearing too is like just the frustration that buyers agents are having or buyers are having just with the low inventory. So if somebody was really frustrated with bidding wars and things that might be happening in resale, what might be a suggestion that you would give them, or where could they start looking at or evaluating new builds as a potential opportunity?
Well, I think there's a couple of opportunities with new builds. And I'll give you a great example that I had one this weekend, because obviously I'm still a buyer's agent too. So I was out with a buyer on Saturday, and she's really focused on new builds. So we visited a couple of communities, and the process that they had, of course, their current inventory or inventory that was going to be done by the summer was already all under contract, as we figured it would be. So they had reservation lists, and basically the way what they encouraged us to do was to sign up on the reservation list, and then when we release new inventory, we will call you first. So it kind of acts as a first right of refusal. And my buyer was a little bit reluctant because she's, her first question was, well, how many people are on the reservation list? And I think there were 20 ahead of her. And, I said, go ahead and sign up for it, because A, there's no risk to you, so you might as well have your name on it. B, the likelihood that those 20 people in front of you are going to find a place, between now and the time this is built is pretty high. I mean, a lot of those people are going to drop off because they're either going to end up renting, they're going to find another house, they're going to decide they don't want to wait. So you might as well put your name in and be patient, because eventually they will come down to you. The other thing is, typically with new builds, you've got various price points. So not all of those people on the waiting list are waiting for the same price point. So, I feel like those numbers are a little skewed. So I think it's wise just to say, well, obviously putting our name on a reservation list doesn't do much, but I think that in the long run, it's definitely worthwhile, and it will pay off. It's kind of like the backup offer. The backup offers work out once in a while, and then you're like, well, that was great. It was totally worth it. I think another thing, and people have done this to me as a listing agent. I always get my sign out in front of a project that's under construction, mainly because if I don't, then people will call the builders, because the builders by law have to have their name and phone number out on the sign. So then they get irritated because they keep getting calls. And they send all the calls to me anyway. So I'll get a bunch of calls if I don't have anything in MLS, but I just have my sign out there. And on one project that I sold recently, I think I had 3 buyers that called me off the sign, and their agents got them through. Their agents called me and said, can we go look at these even though they're not on the market? And I said, sure. The sellers were okay with that. So they went through and looked and ended up putting the units under contract because the sellers were okay with taking some. Now, it doesn't always work, because some sellers are adamant about, nope, we want to get the units in MLS. We want everyone to get a shot at them. others are okay with it. So it just depends on the situation, but it's definitely a strategy. And I know a lot of people are doing that right now, and you know, including myself. And I think it's absolutely worth it. Just drive the neighborhoods, look right down every sign. I do with new builds down in Corey, Maryland, Wash Park, and I write down the number on every sign. And if that house, you know, or that project is pre-sold, they may have another one. And, you know, I get a lot of calls from agents or texts that say, hey, do you have anything coming up? So the other thing is, I would certainly be proactive in calling the agents that tend to sell new construction, because they'll usually have something in their pipeline.
Wow, great advice. Thank you. You know, and you've been in this business for a number of years, and you have been a top real estate agent in this market for a number of years. What would you say has contributed to your success?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. That's a nice compliment.
It's true.
Thank you. I would say that, you know, there's no shortcuts, and it's just hard work. And, you know, I think that I talk to a lot of new agents who get in the business, and, you know, after 6 months, they want to give up and get out. And it's a long game. I mean, for my first 2 years in this business, I literally didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. I lived closing to closing. If I had a closing not come to fruition, it was devastating. I mean, literally, I was like, okay, well, how am I going to pay rent this month? And I stuck with it. But I'm also very patient. And I knew that eventually it would pay off. And, you know, it's so cool to see some agents that, you know, I've talked to over the years that were ready to get out and then just hung in there and kept grinding. I mean, they are grinders. That's the one thing that I find about all real estate agents that are really successful are grinders. And you could say that about any career, but I really see it in real estate. And, you know, they, you know, were steadfast. They followed up with everyone. They knew that even though they did an open house and nothing came of that open house immediately, 4 months later, they got a call and the buyer was ready to go out and start looking and kept their card. It all pays off eventually. And it's hard work. And, you know, you get to a point where you work so hard and you get to a certain level of success, and then you got to figure out how to work efficiently. So, you know, you work hard. And, you know, I still work hard, but I also have like really focused on how to be more efficient, just because life has gotten busier. And since I got in, you know, I had 2 kids and I have other business ventures going on. So, you know, that kind of takes over as well, the time versus money component of it too. But, you know, there's just no substitute for working hard. There really isn't, as you guys know.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I love it. It's like they hear it from you. And I think that's also, I don't know, inspiring or motivating to hear like, okay, like Deviree had a tough time too, like her first 2 years, like it is a long.
Oh my God. I was on the struggle bus for a long time. And I literally, it's so funny because people will tell me how much, you know, newer agents will say how much business they did, you know, in their first year. And I'm blown away, you know, because I did not do anywhere near that. And I mean, they are just, you know, they're like, yep, I closed this and I did this. And I'm like, that's amazing. Because I mean, I think I did, I want to say like 2.5 million my first year. Granted, this was a long time ago. So obviously price points have changed, but still, you know, it was hard. It was and I'll never forget my first listing presentation that I ever went to was, some random house over in Southeast Denver. I don't remember the neighborhood, but I was physically shaking. I was so nervous to go in. I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea what to tell these sellers. I had no idea how to price the property, and somehow managed to get the listing and sold it. And, you know, from there it got a lot easier, but yeah, it was tough. It was not an easy business to break into by any means. You know, and when I started, it didn't work for anyone. I know a lot of people like to work for another agent to kind of get their feet wet, but I was always the, you know, I'm just going to dive in head first, see what happens. Kind of forces you to make it. You can't depend on anything else at that point. So
Right.
Worked out.
Well, and I'm curious to know too, because I think that is like, that's a big leap when you're getting a lot of business, but then you realize you're like running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And so you like you said, to just actually be able to be more efficient. So when you think back, are there any like resources or tools or skills or something that you sort of implemented to help you get more efficient?
Um, that's a good question too. I don't know if I necessarily had tools per se. It's hard to qualify. I think it's just more a realization when you kind of take a step back and look at how you're living your life, and what you're spending your time doing, and whether or not you're enjoying yourself, because it's really easy in real estate, as you guys know, to get sucked in, so you're working 24/7. And because it's not, I look at friends that, if say they have like a 9 to 5 job, and on the weekends, like, they're not on their email, they're not on their phone, which always blows me away, because I've never been in that type of position before. And if you let it, it can completely overtake and overrun your life. And, before you know it, you have nothing else going on. And then you become uninteresting and boring and have nothing to talk about except work, which, quite frankly, everyone gets sick of after a while too. So I think it's more about reflection and kind of, taking a step back and figuring out what's important to you and how you want to live your life. And obviously, having a family and having kids makes a big difference with that, right? Because as a new realtor, particularly when you're working with buyers primarily, and obviously, like, this is basic real estate 101, but we all know that, all the new agents kind of start out buyer heavy, and then you eventually get to a point where you shift primarily to sellers. And obviously that's entirely more efficient, just because, sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. Just because you can manage 10 listings relatively easily, but it's really difficult to manage 10 buyers, particularly in the market that we're in right now. So, kind of, I think having that shift just in your career is incredibly helpful, but, it's just something that kind of, and this is going to sound super trite, and I kind of hate this word, but it kind of happens organically, where you just figure it out, and you're like, well, what's the point of grinding like I do constantly, and having a certain amount of success if I can't actually enjoy it? Same thing when you go on vacation. It's like, I was going on vacations and I'd be working the whole time, and it's like, there's really not a point to this, and we're all guilty of it. That's the thing. I mean, successful realtors tend to be overachievers and competitive, and you can easily get sucked up into it. So, I'm sure there's actually, if I thought about it for a while, I'm sure there's actual time saving tools that have been helpful. But, it's funny, because I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, what's your CRM? I said, well, it's an Excel spreadsheet. And I mean, they were blown away, because, and I said, well, I use it. I mean, I send out mailers to my clients constantly, but there's all these very fancy and innovative CRM programs, which of course I need to, it's on the back burner. I will get to it eventually. Maybe by 20 years in the business, I'll have an effective CRM. We'll see what happens.
Well, it's working. So don't change something that's working.
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those things. I've never gotten around to doing it. So,
no, yeah. I love that. I mean, I think that's really wise too. Just the reflection. You're like, what are my priorities? I'm not, why did I start out doing this? And like, if I'm not enjoying it, or I don't have time for my priorities, what's the point? So I love it. You figure it out, and you find a way to do it, right?
Cool. Yeah. So thank you. One last thing, Deviree. If this is just like, in a perfect world, you could have anything you wanted. What is some sort of support or tool or resource that you wish that you had currently to help you be more successful?
Well, personal driver would be nice. Not so much anymore, but
like out of the sky, like more.
Can I just have a driver and not have to like Waze things when I go to the suburbs? No, I'm just kidding. I usually know where I'm going until you get to those streets with cul-de-sacs. Then it's like there's a way, there's a circle, there's a street, there's a lane. Why do they all have the same names? That's one thing that's great about working in central Denver. It's a grid system. I'm a very logical person, and everything makes sense. It's like, okay, streets are in alphabetical order. This is great. I can find exactly where I'm going. You get out to the suburbs, and it's like, it's free for all. But I would say, something if there was some kind of an app that truly would help me with time management, I think that would be amazing. I tell everyone this, but I have a business coach, which I think is really important for anyone to have, just for a check-in. And it's interesting because even with my business coach, I talk about everything. I talk about my kids. I talk about just, life and everything going on because it's all interrelated. So I think, having that, I know you said wave a magic wand, but I think if you're going to wave a magic wand, you should figure out what it is and go after it. So, a lot of these things I thought about, I've already put into place, but, having a coach and being accountable, I think is really important, for anyone that's in the business. And yeah, I don't know, I'm sure I could find if I could find someone that would just, send me clothes once every month so I didn't have to go shopping, that'd be nice too. I don't like going shopping, but
Same.
I don't either, girl.
I know. I like Einstein's theory of same outfit every day, black shirt and jeans.
Works.
But yeah, it's this business is crazy, and as we were talking earlier, it's in every market there's complaints, and we all have our ups and downs, and even in this crazy market where everyone's making money, it's still the frustration. You should have heard me venting about buyers yesterday, just because you get a new buyer and you're like, great, another buyer. here's another 10 weeks of not getting them anything under contract and having to coach them into offering ridiculously above list price and waiving all their contingencies. And boy, it is nuts out there right now. So, but all the same, super grateful for it. So can't complain. I've been through 2008 as well, so I would certainly take this market over 2008.
I was just gonna ask. I'm like, okay, yeah, you've seen
that was brutal.
After having been in, since 2003, like 2008 had to have bbeen crazy. But would you say this is worse?
No, 2008 was that 2008, 9, and 10 were by far the worst. And it's funny because you think back in the same listings that you're selling now that have multiple offers and are well over list price. Back then, we were selling them and we were offering a free scooter. We'll throw in a washer and dryer. We'll offer seller financing. Literally, the sellers would offer to carry back part of the loan because we just couldn't get any deals done. I remember I was listening to Duplex, I want to say, in Stone State, and I was pulling up active inventory and just what we were competing against. And there were 65 active half duplexes on the market, new construction. And it was like, how do you stand out? Let's face it, a lot of those look pretty similar. And so in order to, if you didn't have an A+ location, you had to stand out in some way. And it was just, that's why we had to offer all these incentives to try to get people to buy the unit. It was insane. But again, what comes around goes around. I don't expect 2008 to happen anytime soon because that was a different situation entirely. But it's certainly, I don't know. We'll see how long it stays like this. But great. This is the craziest. It's since 2003. This is by far the craziest market I've ever seen. It's just, as anyone will tell you, I'm sure. For new agents, especially, this is not normal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Seriously. Okay. Last question. We do something called the Nerd Nugget. It's just like a little tip, a little bite-sized piece of information. Just knowing that, if there are agents out there who are looking at you, looking at your longevity in the business, if you wanted to share anything that comes to mind for you, a piece of advice, a thought, a piece of encouragement, what might be a little nugget that you'd want to leave them with?
I would say what I touched on earlier, which is, well, actually I've got two. Tenacity is really important. If someone says no, find another way. If one door closes, there's another one that will open. You just have to make it happen. And that's part of the hard work and commitment and being patient. I can't stress that enough. your hard work will pay off, and everything that you put out there into the world will come back and benefit you. So when you're, doing the open houses every single weekend, I promise it will come back, and you will get buyers out of it. You will get sellers out of it. Sometimes it just takes a little while, and it eventually happens. And I feel like so many people are just really impatient right now, and they want it like immediately, and it just doesn't happen that way in real estate. It's process. So that is number one. And then the other thing I would say, again, this sounds somewhat trite as well, but it's so true. Like if you're truly looking out for your clients' best interest, people can feel that. I mean, I don't consider myself a salesperson, just because I personally don't like to be sold. So, if someone's trying to sell me, my walls just go like this and they go up. I don't like to be sold, and I don't want to be looked at just as, someone that this other person is making money off of. So for me, I look at it as I'm an advisor. I'm giving everyone information that they need in order to make an informed decision and make the best decision for themselves and where they want to be. And, again, like people sense that it's so apparent. And if you're, kind of running around just looking at, what your commission's going to be or how many deals you can get and not looking out for the best interest of the clients, people are going to figure that out. I feel like the way that it works in Denver, because we really have like a 90-10 rule where, 10% of the realtors are doing 90% of the business. Those 10% of agents are, great agents that really know what they're doing and really are looking out for their clients. And that's what makes them successful. And, that top 10%, they're the ones who are showing your listings over and over. They're the ones to get the listings. And we all know each other, just because Denver is, a small, big town. And so that, has helped define their success and get them and all of us to where we want to be in this business.
Mm-hmm.